Hello, my friend. Stay a while and listen.
What's going on, guys? It's Filthy and I'm back with another video. Today we're looking at what is currently the top Necro push build. This is true at time of recording, but Thorns is pushing it quite hard. This is going to be the Legacy of Dreams Mages. Now obviously if you check back during the course of the season, Thorns might have pulled ahead. I kind of hope not. I do prefer this build. It does also fit a bit better with the season theme, so it might still be top, but it might not. So in the background we're doing some GR 101, I've got 1.3 million sheet damage and about 14.5k main stat with Paragon and Augments. Do have some nice pieces, I do have some that can be improved, but we'll go through the gear, stats and all that sort of stuff. Now in the background I'm actually using my version of the build, which I've tweaked one or two items from the absolute top clear just to make it a little easier to play, a little more casual friendly and a bit tougher. Now I will go through the actual top clear version after I've done my one. It's only a couple of swaps and it is pretty close, but just to make you aware that we are playing a slightly tougher and easier version in this. Before we jump in and look through everything, I just want to welcome anyone who's new to the channel. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done so. And as always guys, a thumbs up is appreciated. So kicking us off guys, we've got the Legacy of Dreams gem. Now once this is at max rank and once you have every slot as ancient, this will be a 9750% multiplier. There are quite a few items here that are quite specific, so it might take you a little bit of time to get up to that multiplier, but you'll still hit like a truck even if you don't get every item as ancient. I cleared 100 I think with a couple missing, so it is certainly possible. So we also get some damage reduction, and at maximum ancient items that's 52%. It's obviously pretty handy. Now the whole build is going to work around skeletal mages with the singularity rune, so this will raise a mage for us and it will consume all of our essence and add extra damage depending on how much essence has consumed. So basically we want as much max essence as possible. We also want to cast our mages when the orb is full, because then they will be doing their maximum damage. Now when we do cast them, because of the Circle of Naluji Vol, we're going to get 2 mages and they're also going to last an extra 4 seconds. Completely essential to the build, you absolutely need this item. Now weapon wise we're going for Scythe of the Cycle. This will buff up our secondary skills by up to 400% provided we have Bone Armour active and on the bar. Obviously we're going to be taking Bone Armour, so that will be up pretty much all the time. We do gear aggressively for cooldown, so we do have a lot on the build, so Bone Armour is always available even if you do overspam your mages. Now one thing to bear in mind is that when you do cast mages you lose 4 seconds of bone armor duration, and that's one of the reasons why the cooldown is quite important. Now in the cube we're also going to be taking the Rylena Shadow Hook. This synergizes really well with the skeletal mages because more essence is more damage, so every point of max essence is 0.5% extra damage. So that combined with the rune that we've taken on the mages means we want max essence everywhere. Paragon, gear pieces as secondary rolls where we can get them. Now fitting in with this maximum essence theme, we're going to take Simulacrum Reservoir. This will double our essence pool, so that means that when you have this up, the mages get a double damage modifier. Now it's not up all the time, it's on a pretty long cooldown, but we're going to take the Haunted Visions Amulet, which will double its duration from 15 seconds to 30. Now it does have a negative effect, it drains 5% of our life. We're going to turn that into a positive when we get to the passives, and this will actually help us out an awful lot with our cooldown. Just bear in mind, Simulacrum lasts 30 seconds in this build. We're also going to be taking Tasker and Theo. This is just a straight damage buff to the mages. Obviously you want to try and get one at 50% if you can, or with better stats than this, but this is just the best that I've found that's ancient. We're going to be taking the Hexing Pants and Mr. Yan, so we get extra damage and resource when we move, so you don't want to be standing still with this build at all. Even if you jump into an ocular circle, you want to be running around in it, just to make sure that this buff is always active. We're going to take Convention of Elements, and when this rolls around onto Physical, because that's the rune for the mages, they just hit extra hard. I probably wouldn't recommend trying to augment your playstyle so that you're dumping out maximum mages on Simulacrum on Physical. By all means you can do, but that just seems a little bit overcomplicated. I will explain the damage window, the rotation of the skills, so if you do want to try and time that with your convention, by all means you can, but there's only 3 elements for Necro, so it does roll around pretty often, so I just tend to set it and forget it. So what Necro build would be complete without the Crispin Sentence? We're going to get double damage against slowed enemies, or triple this bonus against any other crowd control effect. Now we're going to be freezing, we're going to be stunning, but as a backup, if something does get close, we are taking the Bane of the Trapped, and that gives us a slow. So if anything gets close, it does get slowed by this, we do get the bonus. We're also going to take Enforcer for a legendary gem. This is going to give us again another damage buff on the mages. So we've got quite a lot of multipliers on here, which is one of the reasons why the mages really do hit very hard. Now we are done with multipliers for damage, but we're still going to be talking damage a little bit, because obviously if we want to cast our mages at max essence, we need to get as much essence as possible. When we activate the mages, it empties the essence orb, so we need to get essence back as soon as possible. We're going to take Devour Cannibalize, so this is going to go on Numlock, so basically if we get our hands on corpses within 60 yards, they auto consume and we start filling our essence up. This synergizes really well with Land of the Dead. When we activate this, we get infinite corpse skills, so whenever we do have Land of the Dead active, we're going to freeze the screen, so we get triple Crispin's bonus. We also get unlimited corpses, so we get absolutely tons of essence out of Devour. It also acts as like a healing potion, because of the rune on here gives us 3% health every time we consume a corpse. Provided we're consuming corpses, we're always topping our health up. Really handy, really good source of sustain, particularly if you can get your toughness up to a level where you're not getting one shot by pretty much anything that sneezes on you. Now that all works really well when you've got Land of the Dead up, but we also need corpses when we don't have it. Now the mages will kill things, so you will naturally get corpses as you progress through the rift, but we want to try and up that as much as possible. So we're going to be taking Razes Volition, so the skeletal mages will gain the Gift of Death rune. Now this means that they will drop a corpse when they disappear. One thing I probably should have noted for Simulacrum is we also get double mages when this is active, so for quite a lot of the time you're going to be pumping 4 out, so we should have 10 mages out quite a lot of the time. 4 of them might disappear at once, we get 4 corpses at that point, they get auto consumed and we get more essence. Now we also have access to Command Golem, so that's one of the skills we're going to take. With the Flesh Golem rune, we can pop this guy down and he gives us 8 corpses, so again even more essence. And because of the Golem Skin Breaches in the cube, this means that we get 30% damage reduction and also 25 seconds off its cooldown, which is absolutely amazing. Now we're not done with essence generation just yet, because we're also going to take Life from Death in our passives. We've just been over a few mechanisms for how we're constantly consuming corpses. This is great because it gives us a 20% chance of spawning a health globe. Now that's absolutely fantastic, because we're going to be taking the Reaper's Wraps, so when we do gobble up a health globe, we get up to 30% of our primary resource back. So 3 of these will pretty much top you off to max essence. You can then go again with your mages. And then the last item for essence generation is the Requiem Cereplate. We're going to get up to double essence and life when we use Devour, so that's extra life, extra essence. Plus when we get maxed out on either, we get the excess granted over 3 seconds, so our health just kind of tops up ever so often, as well does the essence. Really handy item. So the next gear pieces are cooldown related. The Oryx Crown gives us double the effect of the gem in the helm. We're going to go for a cooldown gem, that's 25% CDR. We're also going to take the Vigilante Belt. It can roll as an extra 8% cooldown. You can't cube it, it's a blue effect, but 8% CDR on your belt is pretty handy. Now boots wise, I'm using Ice Climbers just because these have got Skeletal Mage damage on them. They're ancient, it's got fairly high-ish rolls. I also quite like being immune to freeze and immobilize, but probably best in slot would be Illusory Boots, because this would allow you to get out of a sticky situation. Now being honest guys, you are still pretty squishy with this build, so you're not going to get a ton of utility out of this, because if you find yourself in the middle of a load of mobs, chances are you're going to die anyway. But in theory it is best in slot. I just don't really like the rolls on this pair, so I'm been taking my Ice Climbers instead. Now as for an offhand, any of them will do. It's a complete stat stick. You just need to make sure you get 20 on your max essence secondary, extremely important. And then really, I'd rather have cooldown than life percent, but the extra toughness is fairly handy, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we got to Paragon points. So mopping up the skills very quickly, Skeletal Mage Singularity, this will empty the essence pool, and the more essence we have in the pool, the more damage the mages do. Command Golem, Flesh Golem, on-demand corpses. This is really nice actually if you do die, so if you do end up where you've not got access to Land of the Dead or Simulacrum, this means you can retreat, you can plop your golem down, it means you can play the build a little bit more defensively, and I just find it's really easy to use in combination with Simulacrum, because having so many corpses, so many health globes, it's just really makes it a lot easier to play. And the 30% toughness from the Golem Skin Breaches is handy. Bone Armor Dislocation, we have to take Bone Armor for the Scythe of the Cycle. Dislocation's great because it provides a stun, so this is another Crispin's proc potentially. You can also use it defensively to stop incoming damage, and generally once you get this up to 10 stacks you get 30% damage reduction, so all in all pretty good skill. Devour cannibalize, numlock it, every corpse in 60 yards will be devoured, and we're going to benefit from all those mechanics we talked about earlier. Land of the Dead Frozen Lands, freeze the screen, triple Crispin's bonus, unlimited corpses, amazing, it's just on a 120-second cooldown. And then Simulacrum Reservoir, as we say, it now costs 5% life because of the Haunted Visions, but it does last twice as long. 30 seconds of double mages and double essence, absolutely brilliant. Passive wise, Life from Death we've covered. Overwhelming Essence is more essence, that's more damage, no brainer. Blood's power is absolutely amazing for this setup because we lose so much life through our Simulacrum that we will pretty much proc this, I think about 2/3 of the way through that cycle. Absolutely brilliant because it means another 20% cooldown on everything. It's like perma 20% cooldown, and it is brilliant. And then finally, Final Service. We are still really squishy guys, so something can kill us pretty easily. Now when you haven't procced this, you can be a bit more aggressive with your positioning, but once it's off, then you've got to be really careful. Don't stand in poison, don't go near any grotesques. You know, you do still get pretty one-shot. It does remove all of your mages, you consume them, it sucks, but at least with the command golem you can get straight back on the horse even if you don't have Land of the Dead or Simulacrum. So then, I know I sound like a broken record, but it does make the build a lot easier to play. Now looking at rotation of skills, Numlock, Devour before you go into the Rift. Once you go in you need to stun your first enemy with Dislocation, that will activate Scythe of the Cycle. I would then pump out a set of mages, I would hit Land of the Dead Frozen Lands, and I'd keep pumping out mages until I get to 10. You don't want to use Command Golem whenever you've got Land of the Dead up, there's no point, you're getting infinite corpses anyway. Now once Land of the Dead is expired, you're then going to wait until you get to full essence. You're then going to pop Simulacrum. You don't ever want to pop this unless you're at full essence, because obviously if your essence pool is doubled, it does take twice as long to fill it up. That's where the Golem comes in quite handy, so I will always pop this after Simulacrum, because the auto-consuming of the corpses gives us essence and health globes. Gobble them up, get another Simulacrum set of mages out, and then you basically, once you've cast Simulacrum, trying to get 10 mages out ASAP, because they'll all hit twice as hard. Now in theory and in best practice you're going to try and flip these two, so you're going to have Land of the Dead up, then you're going to wait for an appropriate time to use Simulacrum, then you're going to use Land of the Dead. So you're not using them both at once, because whilst that would be ultra damage, it's leaving you quite vulnerable for quite some period of time. So I tend to like to stagger them, but by all means you can do. Now that does sound a little complicated. If you just remember, golden rule, mages out when you've got full essence, don't use Simulacrum unless you're at full essence, and then you want to stagger Simulacrum and Land of the Dead, and don't use the Golem whilst you've got Land of the Dead up. But other than that, Golem you can use pretty often. It's there I think 6 or 7 seconds after you've cast it, so it is really nice. And then finally guys, gems, we're going for Topaz just for more damage. It does also give us toughness. I did try rubies and I tried getting stone gauntlets in, but I didn't like it, so I just embrace the squish and go for the damage. Now in terms of the build that is on the top of the leaderboards, what the guy's done is the hexing pants go in the cube, because you can drop the golem skin breeches. You're going to pop on Swampland Waders, which is a Witch Doctor item. They do roll with int on them naturally because it's a Witch Doctor, but obviously it's going to be a bit fiddly to get a pair of these. Now, a workaround is potentially to put an Andariel's Visage on your character, because that will also roll with physical damage. That would mean you can get your hexing pants on your character and your Leoric's crown in the cube, but either which way it doesn't really matter too much. Now the only other change you've got is you're going to put on Dainty's Binding instead of the Vigilante belt, so you can have a little bit less cooldown. You do get slightly more damage reduction, because don't forget we're losing the Golem Skin Breeches and we're gaining a curse, but you obviously have to pick one. And the player in question had gone for Frailty, Scent of Blood, giving us 15% extra damage with minions whenever we get something cursed. Now it does make it a bit harder to get the mages out, because obviously you've got the curse animation to cast. Not the biggest thing in the world, but it does cost a little bit of essence as well, so it is a bit more fiddly. So definitely will go higher, but the way that I play it I do think offers a pretty advantage for either a casual or an intermediate player, and obviously you can swap yourself onto a more damaging version just to get that 1 extra level, maybe 2 if you're lucky, but as I say, I do like the casual way. Only other swap guys I'd consider is the Zai Stone of Vengeance in place of the Bane of the Trapped. I think this potentially does offer an advantage because it means you can be a bit of a fanny and hang out at the back of the map. And if you're not wanting to be close, you're not really activating the first part of the Bane of the Trapped. So I personally think this is probably a pretty decent swap, but nobody's running it on the board, so I can't really think why. So if anyone knows, stick it in the comments. Now, one last gearing piece of advice, guys. The Reaper Traps is craftable. You just have to kill Malthael at level 70. Any difficulty, you'll get the plans, so it is pretty easy to get. So in terms of stat priorities, guys, you want to get max essence on your secondary for your weapon and also on your offhand. Try and get 20 if you can for both of them. So I think max essence is 330, so I'm pretty close to maxing myself out. That reminds me, you need it in your Paragon, so up to 50 here. You also need to put some points into move speed. Now I've actually put 300 points in Vitality just to try and negate getting one shot, because we've got so many corpses that we consume. Our sustain is really high, so provided we don't get one shot, this is actually quite useful. And obviously the rest goes in intelligence. For offense, you're going to want to get cooldown reduction, then your crits, and then attack speed. For defense, you want to get armor, life percent, all res, life regen, then utility, area damage, life per hit, resource cost reduction, and gold find. As for the rest of your stats, you want cooldown absolutely everywhere you can get it. You want it on your weapon, offhand, both rings, on the belt, on your gloves, and on your shoulders. And obviously the cooldown gem in the helm for your Leorics. Try and get as close to 100% on the roll as you can. Attack speed's fine because that buffs up the mage's damage. Crit chance, crit damage are obviously nice, and your element of choice is physical, so that goes on braces and also on your amulet. If you are picking yourself up an Andariel's Visage or Swamplands, then you want to make sure you get physical on both of those as well. Ideally you want to get skeletal mage damage on your boots and helm at the very least, but it can also roll on your offhand, so cooldown or skeletal mage damage on here. So I will stick a D3 planner link to the gear that I've got. I'll probably tweak it a little bit to show how I would prefer it to be run, and I'll also put a D3 planner link to the Ultra Push build, just so you can have a look through the differences in the gear. So that's the build, guys. That's how you run mages casual and also with an Ultra Push. I hope you liked the build. I hope you've enjoyed the video, or at least found it useful. If you have, a thumbs up is always appreciated, and I will be back with some more Season 19 content very soon. Take it easy. Peace.